Welcome to Narratives Leadership Story Talks, where great leaders go beyond the bottom line to create lasting impact. Join hosts Jerome Deroy and Julienne Ryan as they uncover the stories behind real-world challenges, offering practical insights to help you lead with empathy, authenticity, and purpose. Each episode dives into how leaders use storytelling to build trust, foster connection, and inspire action. Whether you're navigating workplace dynamics, driving change, or building high-performing teams.
Like, we can think of the used car salesman, and he did a study of thousands of people, and he said, what's the first word that you think of when you think of sales? And the word cloud was the worst. I mean, it was like pushy, ego-driven, money, and he's like, well, yeah, but like, what are we doing every day? Like, at what point, what part of your job, and anybody listening to this can ask themselves this question: what part of your job contains some bit of persuading, convincing, influencing, or moving people to change, right? Well, to get your job, you had to move someone from going one direction and maybe selecting another candidate, and going a different direction and selecting you. So that was a sales interaction, right? Like, all sales is to me is change, is trying to guide someone to change, right? We can talk about all sorts of definitions of it, but selling doesn't necessarily have to be money.
All right. Well, welcome back. That was Alex Smith telling us all about sales. And if you don't know it yet, To Sell is Human is the book that we talked about by Dan Pink. Really great resource, and essentially showing us, as Alex said in this quote, that everyone is, selling something at some point in their life, whether you are in a sales position or not officially in terms of your title and role. So I thought that was really interesting, and I fully agree with it, mainly because that's one of the things that we say about storytelling. Everyone has a story, and everyone can learn to be a storyteller. We do this whether, again, we're conscious of it or not. And I feel like storytelling and sales are two things that really are very connected, both in people's minds and, out in the real world, because we see, the best salespeople tell stories. But what does that really mean? So I'd love to talk a little bit about that with you and see where we get to.
So I just thought it was he was so timely about talking about it, and that for some of us, that word is off-putting, and because it can be so formulaic, and so what's in it for the salesperson, as opposed to the fact that they're not listening or really engaging, or maybe so pressured in the situation they're doing. They're like, I have to get to the yes, I have to get to the sales, I have to get to something, instead of investing time on the front end and showing how they're listening. When you have a story, it's so impactful. I mean, I'm the one who gets teary-eyed with commercials sometimes, the right choice of a commercial. However, I've also been the one who in offices would sit back and play terminology bingo on my pad when I was listening to a salesperson come in and talk about a particular program or product, saying, oh my God, they're not taking any time to really share how much they learned from their interviews or their thought process. They went to the formula. And we can all be guilty of that. So we can take what was painful, some of those meetings, and say, what do I need to get in front of? And be comfortable about allowing that person to understand that how I hear them, what I understand is their challenges, and asking questions. So I think he did a very good job of telling us to be explorers first, and then versus lecturers right away.
Yeah.
And then without the relationship, the best relationships when we land a product or a sales is when it's natural. When we have a conversation, even when we met, we were saying, okay, I'm selling you on what I've done, but it was a natural conversation. It was more exchange of ideas. And we have to kind of remember that. So what appealed to you about his session?
Yeah, no, I relate to everything you just said. And I think for me, what it brings us back to is listening, probably. And essentially that's probably the number one takeaway for any good salesperson, or anyone who's trying to make a point. As Alex said, who's trying to convince someone, or influence someone, or guide someone in some way towards a particular direction. It's not about your particular point, message, or features of your product, whatever it is that you're convincing them with. That's not the part that's going to get them to move. What's going to get them to move is how you listen to them, what comes out of their mouth. And then as a result of what you're hearing from them, then you can formulate your argument. And that's where all your preparation, all your rehearsals, all the things you've learned, that's when they come together, because now it's like you have a context. And the context is given to you by the person in front of you. And so once they give you that, then you can, try to move them in a certain direction, because you've got all the arguments, as opposed to launching into this amazing story that you've prepared for months, this amazing presentation. And then you realize, oh my gosh, that did not land at all. We're not at all where I wanted us to be. But if you actually take a step back and you're asking questions and you're listening, take all that information in, then the answer will come. It takes patience, takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of trust as well. And openness and curiosity. I think that's really what I took away from this.
And we live in a culture where sales sometimes, many times, has negative connotations because there are schools of thoughts where the language is very diminishing and critical to that person, and tell them what they're lacking and what's wrong with them. And we have had guests on who have taken a different approach, including Alex, where there's talking about possibilities. Here's what's right. Cormac Russell was one. Here's what's right. Here's what's possibilities when you think you're up against the wall and there's nothing good. Helping people take a step back and saying it's not going to happen overnight, but here's what you can do to change that relationship in a conversation, or change the dynamic in your team, and disrupt it. And what's some small steps that can be taken to do that? Bring in an outside person, change out where you're having the conversations, but it's about paying attention to what is triggering in us when we're in a search. If we're over forcing something, it's going to sound like we're forcing the conversation. It feels natural and we feel enthusiastic. Chances are we can at least build trust. What we want to do and close might not happen that day, but it's a beginning of a beginning of a beginning. I think that's perfect. I liked his style. I really did.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, very relatable, filled with great resources too. So I invite once again our listeners to go back to the full episode, and certainly the episode notes, where we've got lots of links as well that I think kind of disrupt a little bit the space of how you see sales typically. Kind of goes against that and makes it much more open. If you're curious about that, really encourage you to go back to that episode with Alex Smith, and of course go to our website, narrative.com and narativ.com, where you'll find all the previous episodes before this one in our archive, and lots of different resources, especially actually around sales. And if you're interested in bringing in your sales team into a narrative training, we're always happy to listen to you. And this is the kind of thing that we'll be going into. What are the authentic, genuine stories that you can create that represent your mission, your vision, the features of this product, and give you a way to connect to your prospects and your buyers like nothing else does, really. So if you're interested in that, again, narrative.com and narativ.com. And looking forward to hearing about you. Go ahead, Jules.
One last comment that came to mind when we were talking is it's a nature choice of how we're drawing people to our podcast and who we're having guests. Alex was generous. He shares his knowledge. He shares his resources, and I think that is part of the positive of being an effective salesperson. It's not about holding all the goods; it's sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a good segue into what we want to share with you, dear listeners, and the kinds of training programs that we do. So if you're interested in enrolling yourself or your team into one of our programs, we do group training programs as well as one-on-one coaching, and always happy to listen to what kinds of challenges you and your team are going through and how we can help. So thanks again, and thank you, Jules, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.